the people calling for Joe Biden to step aside, they all seem like people who are very comfortable firing other people. I know the type. They all fit the bill. There are people in the Democratic Party, very rich, very wealthy, very white, very male, who are just, everyone's disposable. Get rid of Joe. And now, with 120 days before the election, suddenly they believe in the impossible. For 8 years, they've been telling me, can't have Medicare for all, you got to be an adult, you got to be pragmatic, you got to stay the course. For 8 years, they've been telling me, don't be a child. All of a sudden, they believe that a utopia is possible in Chicago in August, where it's going to be kumbaya, and we're going to pick who. We're going to pick somebody other than Joe Biden, and there's just going to be this magical solidarity, and we'll defeat fascism. It doesn't work that way. I don't think so. I think you got to stay the course. I think you stay the course. Show a little compassion to Joe Biden. There's something beautiful about all of us coming together and lifting up an 81-year-old man and supporting him. I'm going to be talking about this today. Hippocrates wrote, practice two things in your dealings with disease. Either help or do not harm the patient. The disease is Trump, the patient America. Biden is the medicine. Switching prescriptions while the patient is still on the mend will kill us all. Leave it alone. As the kids used to say back in the 1600s, primum non nocere. First do no harm. My Latin's a little rusty. Joe Biden is the ointment. Stop poking the body. And where are we getting the idea that the debate destroyed Joe Biden's chances of being reelected? I mean, other than from the self-important pundits and political blowhards, strategists who think they come off grandiose, shouting for bold, careless, irresponsible moves like toppling a sitting president. A brand new Morning Consult poll shows Joe up in Michigan and Wisconsin, down a bit in Pennsylvania. And that, as I will continue to remind all of us until Election Day, that is all that matters, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Joe Biden gets exactly to 270. That's what you need to win. He gets to 270 when he wins those three states. He's got a minor problem in Pennsylvania, perhaps. I suspect people like James Carville calling for Biden to step aside, calling on Democrats to stop donating until he steps aside. I suspect people like James Carville are about to look even more foolish than they already do. And Joe's defiance, his intransigence, it's a net positive because it's a profile in leadership. Voters, and he knows this, voters don't listen to the editorial board of the New York Times or meatheads like Rob Reiner, Abigail Disney, or Barry Diller, who are calling for Joe to step aside because they're multimillionaires with too much time on their hands, desperately in need of relevance. Yeah, if you read the headlines, things don't look too good for Joe Biden this morning. If you dig below the surface, things are just fine. The New York Times reports that White House visitor logs show a doctor from Walter Reed, whose expertise is Parkinson's disease, visited the White House 8 times since last summer. Apparently, because of his gait, they thought he had Parkinson's disease. Biden's press spokeswoman yesterday said the president was checked out for Parkinson's disease. He doesn't have it. And by the way, if he does, we can't have a president suffering from Parkinson's? Michael J. Fox just played Glastonbury with Coldplay. So what if he has Parkinson's? Biden appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe Monday morning to challenge any Democrat who doesn't think he can win to run against him. Biden said, run against me, announce for president, challenge me at the convention, go ahead. Biden is wisely taking a page from the Trump playbook by saying it's the elitists in the Democratic Party who are trying to ditch him. And to be fair, it was the elitists who hired him in the first place. Joe, did you really think the neoliberal corporate cheats who destroyed Bernie and Elizabeth Warren 4 years ago so you could be their nominee were ever going to show you loyalty? You're a hired hand. These neoliberal Democratic hacks think Biden's just as disposable as those swing state factory workers they always lay off and then wonder why the middle class votes Republican. The people who forced Joe on us 4 years ago, I'm a Bernie guy, the people who forced Joe on us 4 years ago and now think he can be replaced are the same people who hate unions. They're very comfortable firing people. Abigail Disney was calling for Democrats to stop donating until Joe quits. Well, she was paying some of her workers, black and female, $750 a month to work 35-hour weeks until the Hollywood Reporter did an expose, and she learned that's wrong. She learned about income inequality 8 years ago, and it took an expose in the Hollywood Reporter to teach Abigail Disney that paying black and female workers to do documentaries about marginalized communities, paying them $750 a month to work 35-hour weeks, is grotesque, immoral. But we should listen to Abigail Disney. She says, I'm a Democrat, and Joe needs to step aside. Do you think the Democrats who put the thumb on the scale for Joe back in 2020 are ever going to give us Medicare for all? Are ever in this mini primary that they're dreaming of and this open convention they're talking about? Do you think they're ever going to give us Medicare for all? Do you think they're going to get rid of Trump's tax cuts for the rich or raise the minimum wage? Yes, these people are strong on abortion, tamping down prejudice, and LGBTQ rights, but that's only because it affects them personally. For the most part, the only Democrats telling us Biden can't win are the ones who have nothing to lose. It's unimaginable to these people that some of us have grown to like Joe, because he is moving a little to the left. It's unimaginable to these tired and bloated hacks like Rob Reiner, Abigail Disney, Barry Diller, who just turned 120, the editorial boards of the Washington Post, the New York Times, David Remnick of the New Yorker. It's unimaginable to these elitist snobs that there are actually people, Democrats, willing to knock on doors in states these pampered elitists wouldn't dare step foot in. They don't understand how a ground game works. They read one or two bad polls for Joe Biden and they wet the bed, and they want the election handed to them because everything in their life has been handed to them. They don't want to work for anything. They just want to pick this magical white knight, white, by the way, who's going to save us all. And so, by digging in his heels, Joe is now tapping into the same contempt for the Beltway's ruling class that Trump taps into. It's smart. And it is the left of center Democrats, the progressives, the real progressives, who are now coming to Joe's side. The Squad, the Progressive Black Caucus, women, black women, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, they're the ones who are saving Joe's ass right now. And he's not going away. He'll remember that after he wins in November, and if he forgets, we'll remind him. He'll remember who saved his ass. It was the progressives. It was women, black women, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. And if he forgets, we'll remind him. And we'll remind Vice President Harris and Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, these two corporate stooges, just like Joe Biden, Joe's a corporate stooge. We'll remind all three of them and the entire administration that if any of you want to win in 2028, it's us, the progressives, whose ass you better start kissing. Joe Biden will be carried back into the Oval Office in November by the progressives. Adam Schiff, the Democratic nominee for Senate in California, he should not be the nominee. He is the corporate, Harvard-educated stooge. Great on January 6th. Great on the two impeachments. But he wavered last week after the debate. He hinted it might be time for Joe to go. You know who didn't waver when Joe was down? Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who should have been the Democratic nominee for the California Senate seat, not Schiff. Barbara Lee, much wiser. Barbara Lee is the only House member to vote against the war in Afghanistan. She deserved the Democratic nomination, not Adam Schiff. Schiff doesn't have her wisdom. He has a Harvard degree. That's why he has no wisdom. Harvard Law, no wisdom. He was one of the first to suggest that maybe it's time for Joe Biden to be thrown under the bus. He's the kind of person who is very comfortable firing others. It's the white men and the Democratic Party. They're the problem. It's the rich white men in the Democratic Party. They're the problem, not the women, for the most part. None of the blacks. It's the white men and a handful of white women. From now on, my Democrats, only vote for Democrats who are Democrats because they have to be Democrats. Not because they thought, you know what, it's cool to be a Democrat. The best comedians, artists, musicians, writers, employees are the ones who have to do it. Only vote for Democrats who have no choice but to be Democrats. Cori Bush, who represents the people of St. Louis, was living in a car with her children. Now she's a congresswoman. She has to be a Democrat. It's why she, and only she, knew back in 2021 that the eviction moratorium was about to expire. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, President Biden, they didn't know that the eviction moratorium was about to expire. Cori Bush knew. She lived in her car with her children once. So she took to the steps of the Capitol and slept on the steps of the Capitol until Biden renewed the eviction moratorium. And he did. Of course, the Supreme Court overturned it because Hillary wasn't elected in 2016. So what I would like the media and my listeners to do is stop asking candidates, why are you running for office? Ask them, why are you a Democrat? Why are you a Republican? The offices they're seeking are much bigger than their ambition or their vision of themselves. This is about a party, not the individual. Why are you a Democrat? I know why Cori Bush is a Democrat. Why is Adam Schiff a Democrat? Different reason. You can replace Joe Biden, but it's still going to be the same Democratic Party. And I see more opportunity to fix this Democratic Party, to restore its New Deal aspirations with Joe at the top of the ticket, than I do with anyone else you're going to replace him with. Because you're not going to replace him with Bernie or Elizabeth Warren or Katie Porter or Jamie Raskin or Cori Bush. Gavin Newsom crapped the bed on universal health care in California. I don't mean to upset the people who are dreaming of this utopian ticket. Gavin Newsom, who I like, he crapped the bed on universal health care in California. Vetoed it. He's been all over the map on the single most important issue of our time, free health care. He says he's for single payer until a bill sits on his desk and has to be signed. Suddenly he's for universal health care coverage. Working with the insurance companies. We can't put an entire industry out of business. We can't put 1/6, they love to say this, 1/6 of our economy is the healthcare industry. We can't put them out of business. That's unrealistic. But the same people say, not Gavin Newsom though, he's standing with Joe, but the same people say it's unrealistic. You can't put the healthcare industry out of business. It's unrealistic. But suddenly the Democrats are going to miraculously find a dream ticket to replace Joe Biden. Vice President Harris crapped the bed on Medicare for all back in 2020. She was for it until she wasn't. She was for court-ordered busing until she wasn't. Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, he did very well in 2020 in Iowa. Pure corporatist, opposed Medicare for all from the get-go. Well, he's from McKinsey, those thieves. And he loves to remind us how he served in Afghanistan. Little stolen valor there, Pete. You did it while you were mayor of South Bend, Indiana. You were behind the green zone using your skills that you learned from McKinsey. You were in the green zone tracing money that was being paid to warlords. Yeah, you get to wear the uniform. You get to play dress up, doing a job that you could have easily done back home in Indiana. You were the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and you wore the uniform as a glorified accountant in the green zone. You weren't meeting with bankers or warlords in Afghanistan. You were polishing your resume. Beau Biden, God bless his soul, better man than I could ever be. He served in Iraq, but as a JAG officer. He was the state attorney general for Delaware. And while he was the state attorney general for Delaware, he deployed to Iraq for 9 months as a JAG officer. That is a lawyer who gets to wear the uniform. You're not a combat veteran when you're a JAG officer. Jagoff Ron DeSantis was a JAG officer. That is a lawyer, a scumbag who gets to wear the uniform and play dress up. Beau Biden, 10 times the patriot I could ever be. Ron DeSantis is a Nazi. Seriously. And had he become the Republican nominee, we'd have gotten to the bottom of the role he played in the torturing of prisoners down in Gitmo. We do know he thought force-feeding them rectally was hysterical, especially since this scumbag Ron DeSantis knew that shoving a tube up there and pumping liquid food is nothing other than torture. Zero nutrition is absorbed into the system when you force feed through the rectum. Ron DeSantis knew that, which is why he watched and laughed. Ron DeSantis is a Nazi scumbag who didn't serve our country. He wore the uniform as a lawyer. A lot of opportunistic lawyers wear the uniform and deploy overseas. A lot of opportunistic ex-McKinsey employees like Pete Buttigieg put on the uniform and sit in the green zone dodging paper cuts. Robin Williams, on the other hand, saw more action than any of these people combined. Robin went into the outer reaches. He would put on USO shows and go into the outer reaches of Afghanistan and Iraq to entertain our soldiers. When he was told there were 3 to 5 soldiers out in no man's land, he said, let's do a show. Robin Williams risked his life putting on shows for our soldiers. He wasn't a lawyer who wanted to play dress up. I'm really tired and sick and disgusted by lawyers and glorified accountants who told us they wore the uniform. That's all you did. You wore the uniform. You know who else wore the uniform? You know who else wore the uniform? Tom Cruise and A Few Good Men. He's as much connected to war as Ron DeSantis and Pete Buttigieg. Anyway, Joe Biden. I suspect when the dust settles, Biden comes out stronger in the polling. Now, granted, this is partly wishful thinking, but let's see how these things look by the end of next week. I suspect in the long run, Democrats and donors rejecting Joe right now are doing him a huge favor. I suspect it will turn out to be the best thing that happened to him. This abandonment will serve as the narrative that turns the election around for him. There's now a story. Joe stumbled. He's in the wilderness. His fair weather friends all turned against him. Alone, he came back. This is the hero's journey. It's not fake, it's real. Joe is on the hero's journey right now, and the American voter is going to respond to this. More on the elitists in the Democratic Party and the media who want Joe to step aside later on in this episode. As I said, Joe appeared on Morning Joe Monday and railed against the elitists, telling him to step aside. Now, in my world, in your world, we think this is important. The people who listen to this show are into this. But how many people do you think watch Morning Joe? Maybe 1 million. How many people watched the interview with Stephanopoulos Friday? Maybe 8 million. Fewer than 50 million watched the debate. Joe Biden won with more than 81 million votes. Trump got 7 million fewer votes. Look at the numbers we're talking about. We're talking about 150 million Americans who need to be convinced. 150 million, more than 150 million Americans. And roughly, by my count, it's really 250,000 voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin who need convincing. That's it. I'll talk about that later on the show. Trust me, the 250,000 that Biden needs in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, trust me, they're not watching Morning Joe, and they're not listening to the editorial board of the New York Times or David Remnick over at the New Yorker. This debate means nothing to them. The discussion over Joe's alleged senescence means nothing to them, nor should it. What I have to say, or the New Yorker, the Boston Globe, the Times, the Economist, Maureen Dowd, David Axelrod, it means nothing to the more than 150 million Americans who will be voting in November. And Joe Biden knows that. So does Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump, he is completely crapped on all those people who are telling Joe Biden to step aside, these self-important people, the media, the pundits, the strategists. He can't do that. He'll lose if he talks to us this way. The American people, we're part of the fabric. He's overturning all the norms. American people don't care what the Beltway, the millionaires tell them to do. They don't listen. Joe lost the debate. How do we know? How do we know? Richard Nixon supposedly did very poorly against John Kennedy during America's first televised debate back in 1960. Nixon, in the first debate, just like Joe Biden, had a really bad cold. He was sweating. He didn't wear the right makeup. But Kennedy ended up winning the election. They say because he won the debate. You know, he won the presidential election by 112,000 votes. That's 0.17% of the popular vote. So who decided Kennedy won that debate? People who listened to the debate on the radio, when they were polled, they thought Nixon won. People who watched it on television thought Kennedy won. But it played no role in the general election. He beat Nixon by 112,000 votes. Debates don't matter. What everyone but the voters think, all that matters is what the voters think. And Amtrak Joe's call to Morning Joe meant nothing except to people like you and me. The interview was conducted over the phone, and Biden made the mistake of admitting that he was reading off notes. And immediately people jumped on that. Oh my God! Of course he sounded cogent. He was on the phone reading off notes. Hey, I'm working off notes. That's what we do. I work off these notes here, okay? Jake Tapper and Dana Bash were reading questions written for them verbatim. Nobody complained that they were reading their questions off a teleprompter. Nobody complained. So Joe's reading off notes. We're electing a president, not the host of The Tonight Show. He doesn't have to be spontaneous, glib, and always have a rejoinder. You know who has that? Trump. You know, when you're making crap up and lying, it's very easy to have a rejoinder. The chairman of the Black Congressional Caucus, Stephen Horsford of Nevada, said he still supports Biden. Black Congressional Caucus. Not a single black Democrat in the House is abandoning Biden. Joe Manchin, the Democratic senator from West Virginia who's retiring, said he sees no reason for Joe Biden to drop out. Manchin said it's ridiculous to call the race this soon, adding Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. That's the issue. You know we're in trouble when Joe Manchin is the voice of reason. You would think he'd be the first to throw Joe overboard. He's a horrible man, Joe Manchin. His daughter is a criminal, price gouging. She ran a drug company. She should be in jail. But he is a Democrat who knows how to win in West Virginia. With him gone, his seat flips red. So he knows something. Maybe we listen to him on this. Elizabeth Warren, who ran for president in 2020 and lost to Joe Biden, announced on Monday she's standing with Joe. She said, President Biden is our nominee. She said he's an excellent president. He is an excellent president. She said he works hard on behalf of working families every day. Among his many accomplishments that Warren cited, Joe Biden brought the price of insulin down to $35 a month for seniors, and he's forgiven student loan debt for 5 million Americans. I can't tell you the number of listeners who write to me and say, I can't believe my student loans have been forgiven, or my parents have diabetes. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, they're only paying $35 a month for insulin. Good insulin. There's good insulin and bad insulin. Good insulin. By the way, Trump lied during the debate when he said he brought the price of insulin down for seniors. He took credit for Joe Biden's accomplishment. This is what Trump did. He set up a 5-year voluntary test program in Medicare where some seniors could opt in to a very confusing plan that would lower their insulin costs. Roughly 800,000 seniors signed up for it. And because it was complicated and only covered certain types of insulin, nobody really took advantage of it. However, under Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, Joe has made insulin universal, $35 a month for all seniors, for all insulin delivery systems, and it's permanent, unlike Trump's 5-year test period. Bottom line, under Biden, the nearly 4 million seniors who need insulin are now getting it across the board at $35 a month. No questions asked, and they get the insulin they need in any form they need it. Under Trump, this is the lie, 800,000 seniors were entitled to a specific form of insulin, specific form of insulin delivery system. And yes, it was at $35 a month, but it only went into effect in January of 2021, his last month in office. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is promising to bring the cost of insulin down to $35 a month for everyone. Trump, during the debate, wouldn't answer the question, will you bring down the price of insulin for everyone? Will you bring it down to $35 a month? Wouldn't answer that. Instead, he just went on and on about the migrants. But you know what Joe did? He said accidentally, we killed Medicare. He misspoke. So replace him, the guy who's now passed legislation so Medicare negotiates with Big Pharma. Insulin is down to $35 a month across the board for seniors, but he accidentally said we killed Medicare as opposed to we saved Medicare or whatever. Got to get rid of him. Got to get rid of the 81-year-old. He misspoke. Are you that cruel? Are you that cruel that you would fire somebody for occasional lapses? Are you that self-important to think the President of the United States can't flub a line or two? Bernie Sanders on Sunday called Trump the most dangerous president in American history. Bernie said he has no doubt that Joe Biden can defeat Trump in November. Bernie said he will not attend any meetings called by Virginia Senator Mark Warner. Mark Warner is holding meetings to figure out how Democratic senators could gently nudge the president to step aside. Bernie, Mark Warner, very comfortable firing people. White man from Virginia. Very easy for him to get rid of somebody. Bernie, who is a year older than Biden, said, quote, Biden is old. He's not as articulate as he once was. I wish he could jump up the steps on Air Force One. He can't. What we have to focus on is policy, unquote. Bernie is absolutely right. It's not how Biden walks, and it's not how he talks. It's what he does. I have a lot of friends who wanted Bernie in 2016 and 2020. They feel he was cheated. I wanted Bernie in 2016 and 2020. I feel he was cheated by the Democratic leadership. WikiLeaks proved that, at least as far as 2016 went. But Bernie is not a Democrat. He's a Democratic socialist. He caucuses with the Democrats. Both his presidential races were insurgencies. He was a Democratic socialist who came close in 2020 to taking over the entire Democratic Party and turning it back to what it was under Franklin Roosevelt. He's a miracle of democracy. It's a miracle that he got as far as he did. And he's why I despise the leadership in the Democratic Party, along with most of its members. I used to despise Joe Biden. If you're a longtime listener to this show, you know I did not like Joe Biden or Amy Klobuchar or Pete Buttigieg or Vice President Harris. I could barely stand Elizabeth Warren. I liked Elizabeth Warren, but she's not Bernie. The very same people right now calling on Joe to resign are the very same people who would have decimated Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren the second they accepted the nomination back in 2020. The reason Bernie endorsed Hillary Clinton and 4 years later Joe Biden, the reason he endorsed both of them and campaigned for them is he knew that. He knew what he had been up against. This Democratic Party is run by millionaires and billionaires. They're fine if Donald Trump wins. Now, they'll be upset if Trump wins because they won't be in the loop if he wins. And they need to be in the loop. They knew if Bernie won, they wouldn't be in the loop with Bernie either. They want to be in the loop. What's the point of having all that money if you can't dictate policy? So they would have tried to destroy him had he gotten the nomination. Realistically speaking, this party, the Democratic Party, doesn't yet have a support system for a left-of-center president or nominee like Bernie Sanders. Yet. Even had Bernie been nominated and then went on to beat Trump, and I think he might have, it would have to have been by a landslide. He said that. He said, I need a revolution. That's what he said. He said, if I win, it has to be a revolution, it has to be a landslide. Well, even if it had been a landslide, and those are next to impossible, even if he had a filibuster-proof Senate, the Democratic Party doesn't have enough AOCs, Cori Bushes, Ruben Gallegos, Summer Lee's, Ilhan Omar's, Rashida Tlaib's to prop up the movement. We're getting there. In the House, the Senate, not so much. The bench for progressives is much deeper. Thanks to Bernie. I'll even go so far as to say thanks only to Bernie. Maybe I'm wrong. But let's be honest about the progressives and the Democratic Party. I love Elizabeth Warren. I love Katie Porter's been on this show. She's fantastic. But they are not socialists. They're progressives. They buy into the idea that capitalism can be regulated. But we live in a kleptocracy. This isn't capitalism. This has been a kleptocracy before Trump was even born. Back when Trump was wearing diapers the first time. But, man, does he smell. My friends keep telling me, people who are in New York, they say it's unbelievable. It's really take a skunk, a dead skunk, dip them in cat urine, then throw up on it, and then spray some Old Spice over that, and that's what Donald Trump smells like. I'm not making that up. So, look, the Democrats are in a much better place than they used to be, thanks to Bernie. Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Sheldon Whitehouse, Jamie Raskin, AOC, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. They're in a better place. And not just because Republicans have gotten so much worse. And because of the newfound depth of the Democratic Party's progressive left, Joe Biden, a career politician, did more than anyone thought he would to placate them. He had no choice. Yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act, Bernie's Build Back Better, was decimated. I don't think Joe fought Joe Manchin as hard as he should have. I mean, I would have said to Joe Manchin, you better take this as it is or your daughter's going to jail. That's why I'm not in politics. I don't think that's legal. I don't think you can. I know we have this fantasy that that's how Lyndon Johnson passed all those. I am sweating. I am just so hot here. I can't do the show with the fan on because it's too loud. So look, I know some listeners are enjoying the crack up in the White House right now in the Democratic Party because it reinforces everything they believe about the Democrats, everything they always thought about Biden and Harris. They say that the Biden White House is corrupt and controlled by the rich. They say the entire Democratic Party is corrupt and controlled by the rich. That is true. But it is the most center-left, certainly the most progressive in modern political history, at least when it comes to domestic issues. The Democratic Party's policy hasn't changed since Bill Clinton when it comes to Gaza, Ukraine, as well as the insistence upon global hegemony. Yes, hegemony. I knew I was going to have trouble pronouncing hegemony, so I did it phonetically. The insistence upon global hegemony, that's a whole other story. The Democratic Party's foreign policy shackles our domestic policy. The Democrats have a horrendous, hawkish democratic policy. It's because of the overcorrection from George McGovern's big loss in '72. But all that being said, Raphael Warnock, Elizabeth Warren, Sheldon Whitehouse, to name just a few in the Senate, and of course Bernie, who caucuses with the Democrats, we have a better chance fixing the Democratic Party than we do creating a third party that can win a national election between now and Election Day. Look, I welcome the idea of a third party. If you read the Constitution, we could have a quasi-parliamentary system with a third party. You have to get 270 electoral votes. If there's a third party, it gets thrown into the House of Representatives, and the Speaker of the House becomes like the Prime Minister, sort of, kind of. A third party, there would be, well, for another conversation, but not between now and Election Day. Joe Biden is suddenly discovering who his friends in the Democratic Party are. It's African Americans, it's women, primarily it's African American women, and I'll go over this later on. He's staying in the race. And who do you think he's going to be beholden to after he wins in November? Now, look, I'm not foolish enough to think he's ever going to turn his back on the bankers and credit card companies who got him the nomination, who funded his entire political career since the time he was 28. He's from Delaware, which is now one of the world's largest money laundering operations in the world. Not making this up. Delaware, one of the Dakotas, I think it's South Dakota, and Delaware, are two of the biggest money laundering operations in the world, bigger than the Cayman Islands. I'm not foolish. I know who Joe Biden is. He spends every Thanksgiving in the home of David Rubenstein. David Rubenstein, founder of the Carlyle Group, perhaps the world's largest war profiteer. But it is Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, the Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, women who own his ass right now. Not the credit card companies or the arms manufacturers. If he wants to get reelected, it's the progressives who have stood with him. And when he wins, it will be payback time for us. This is an opportunity. Now, again, I know he's not Bernie. He's not Elizabeth Warren. But he is a political animal. It's going to be women, blacks, the squad, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, who got him reelected. And they're going to come collecting after November. This is the mop-up for July 9th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thanks for finding me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. That's what I've been told. The best way to never miss an episode is to hit the like button. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell, wherever that is. I remain indebted to all of you for listening to this show. I cannot do it without the listeners. I have nobody helping me other than the listeners, which is why I read all your comments. I really do. So go ahead and leave a comment, unless you're a moron. This is a gated community when it comes to comments. I ask that you don't write in all caps. Keep your use of emojis down to a minimum. Also, there's a filter for bad language. So if you use bad words, and there are such a thing as bad words, the comments end up in a dump folder. And I don't get to the dump folder until the weekend. So if you post a comment and you can't see it, it probably got filtered out because you used a bad word. It takes a lot of work keeping the MAGA morons and the Russian bots out of this ecosystem. And if you don't think there are Russian bots spreading lies for Donald Trump, come run my website or my YouTube channel or my iTunes channel. Come for a day and screen the comments, and you'll see how proficient and how these bots work. So I appreciate all of your comments. Keep them coming. You actually, even I don't post the MAGA morons, but I read the MAGA morons because they let me know what the other side, I won't say thinking, what the other side is thinking. No, what the other side is farting. I think that's what the other side does. If you would like a free transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. It's free. They're free. All the transcripts are free thanks to my listeners who purchase garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com. They bought my, let me go full screen here, my Rudy mugshot coffee mug. I'm going to get rich. These are coffee mug shots. I'm going to be, once somebody buys this, then I know I'm going to be rich. Collect them all. This is my Donald Trump mugshot coffee mug. A couple of people actually bought this. There's my Still a Democrat t-shirt. It's a heart that's wounded. You can get a Still a Democrat coffee mug. My Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. That I think I'm most proud of. And then there's the stuff I'm not proud of that makes up the bulk of the sales. The Trump fart filtration mask. My number 2, you'll pardon the pun, biggest seller. And, I ask you to buy the stuff I'm proud of, not the Trump fart filtration mask. I've asked you not to buy, this is my biggest seller, the chef's apron with the words emblazoned over the front, quote, "I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." I won't lie to you. This is my biggest seller. One woman, I think she's bought more than 4 of these. I think she's up to 5. I think so. There are a couple of people who, there are a couple of people who keep buying the "I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea" chef's Abram, and I think they do it to punish me. It hurts that this is my biggest seller. I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Well, the Democratic Party is turning its back on Joe Biden. Another thing that our president has in common with the American people. They've turned their back, Democratic Party turned their back on the American people, and now they're turning their back on Joe Biden. But the money is still coming in. You might remember on the last show I told you Joe outraised Donald Trump in June. People were shocked by that. After the debate, Biden saw a record haul of $30 million, mostly from small donors. Right now, the party is sitting on $240 million in cash. It's a lot of money. He's in good shape. The party's in good shape because money's important. That's how you get out the vote. CNBC reports this morning, however, that big money donors have stopped answering calls from the big Democratic bundlers, people like Jeffrey Katzenberg. Hollywood is furious with Jeffrey Katzenberg right now for bundling those big donations, throwing these big parties. Some Hollywood liberals say they feel they were misled by Jeffrey Katzenberg, who didn't tell them how old Joe had gotten. Wow, imagine that, a studio executive being dishonest. Biden on Monday told donors, "I'm done talking about the debate and my age." He said, "It's over. End of conversation." He reminded them there are 40 days until the convention and 120 until the election. He said, "It's time to get to work." As I've been saying, I believe this defiance works to his advantage the same way it works for Trump. The American people hate the news media. They hate the donor class. They hate the party's stalwarts. They hate the Hollywood elitists who raise money for the Democratic Party. And I suspect this will all be reflected in the fresh batch of polling. I suspect the American people agree with me when I say, who cares that Joe is a little slow? And I like him even more now that he's defying these rich pricks. I suspect the American people, like me, are going to be protective of Joe Biden. I suspect they're going to find him even more appealing going up against the sclerotic, moneyed interests who are the source of all our discontent. You have heirs to the Walmart fortune telling the Democrats to stop donating until Joe steps down. Get the F out of my party. Go F yourself. All of you, get out of this. This is why we lose, because we're listening to the Walton family or Jeffrey Katzenberg or Barry Diller or David Geffen or Abigail Disney, Rob Reiner. All of you can go F yourself. We would be so much more successful if you would go be Republicans. Go be Republicans. I've never been this sweaty before. I wish I could say I'm sweaty because I'm working really hard for you, but I'm just sweating. This is grotesque. Well, a brand new Morning Consult poll, they're a good polling organization, shows Trump, since the debate, you ready? Shows Trump beating Biden nationally by 2 percentage points. In a national head-to-head after the debate, Trump is now leading Biden by well within the margin of error. And this is Morning Consult's second poll since the debate. Last week, immediately following the debate, it showed Trump leading Biden by 3 points nationally. Now it's down to 2 points. This is what I said would happen. The dust from the debate settles. Joe narrows the gap. We go to a statistical dead heat into Labor Day. Now that's according to the Morning Consult poll. Again, all that matters is the polling in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Doesn't matter what our president's approval rating is. All that matters is the polling in those 3 states. I've been over this a million times. It's Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That's it. Joe won those 3 plus Georgia and Arizona in 2020. Hillary didn't. Look at this map. He can lose Georgia, Arizona. He can even lose Nevada. He still gets to 270. That's what you need. He gets exactly to 270 when he just wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And I've explained to you, all the other blue states are locked. He's not losing New Mexico or Colorado. It's locked. It's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. That's the game. Everything else is noise. He gets to 270. Trump gets 268. Biden gets 270. So, a brand new Morning Consult poll, what does it say? Since the debate, it shows Joe Biden winning Wisconsin by 3 points. The Morning Consult poll shows Biden defeating Trump in Michigan by 5 points. It shows Trump ahead of Biden by only 1 point in Georgia, well within the margin of error. But don't listen to the voters. Listen to the New York Times editorial board. The same people who assured you Iraq had WMDs are now assuring you that Joe can't win. Now, look, I love the New York Times. I also think their columnists are the best, except for David Brooks. All of them are calling on Joe Biden to step down. Thomas Friedman, Maureen Dowd, even Paul Krugman this morning. Paul Krugman calls Biden the best president of my lifetime, but he needs to step down. Read Paul Krugman. I've learned economics reading Paul Krugman in the New York Times. He says Joe Biden is the most successful president in his lifetime, but he needs to step down. Replace him with who? Mr. Krugman, Professor Nobel laureate Paul Krugman. Replace him with whom? Doesn't say. They're all wrong. That same Morning Consult poll shows Joe Biden competitive in North Carolina, down by fewer than 3 percentage points. That's incredible. That's incredible. With 2 months before Labor Day, Biden down after the debate in North Carolina by 3 percentage points. Again, doesn't matter. All that counts is Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Right now, most polling shows Biden weak in Pennsylvania. That's one of the 3 states he must win. Real clear polling averages show Trump beating Biden in Pennsylvania right now by 4.5 percentage points. Yes, that is on the outer perimeter of the margin of error. 4.5%, that's significant. So why is Joe not leaving the race? He's looking at polling that shows a clear path to 270. Trust me on this. This isn't his ego. Pennsylvania needs work. It is going to be very hard for Donald Trump to steal Pennsylvania. Right now, the governor, Josh Shapiro, is a Democrat. The Attorney General is a Democrat. The Speaker of the State House is a Democrat. Democrats control the upper chamber. And most importantly, 5 out of the 7 Supreme Court justices for the state of Pennsylvania are Democrats. That matters. That matters. Now, the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania, who oversees elections, is a Republican. But Pennsylvania will be a very hard state for Trump and his lawyers to strong-arm election officials in. It's going to be very hard for him to win in Pennsylvania through brute force, through intimidation. There's also a race for Senate in Pennsylvania that looks increasingly stronger for the Democrats each day. More about Bob Casey, Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, Democrat, in a few minutes. It looks like he's going to win his seat. All Scranton Joe needs to focus on is Pennsylvania, where he was born. He was born in Scranton. And yes, it looks like he's down 4.5% in Pennsylvania. 8 years ago, at the same exact time, July 9th, 2016, the Real Clear polling averages had Hillary Clinton defeating Trump in Pennsylvania by more than 2 percentage points. And as we all know, she ended up losing that state. The polling in these 3 states will be all over the place until after Labor Day. 8 years ago, on July 9th, 2016, the Real Clear polling averages had Hillary defeating Trump by 7.4 percentage points in Wisconsin. She lost Wisconsin. 8 years ago, the Real Clear polling averages showed Hillary beating Trump in Michigan by 8.3 percentage points. She ended up losing Michigan. It comes down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. In those 3 states, Hillary lost by 100,000 votes. She won the popular vote nationwide. She just needed to flip 100,000 votes in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then there would be a 6-3 liberal majority on the Supreme Court right now. By the way, those 3 liberals that we do have, women. Joe Biden is staying in the race. Why? Trust me on this, please. Trust me on this. Okay? He is staying in the race because he picked up the phone and he spoke to the people who count. He spoke to Josh Shapiro, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania. He spoke to the Democratic governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, and he spoke to the Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. And he said, give it to me straight. What are you seeing on the ground? How is our game? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What do I need to do? And can I do it? And you have to trust me on this. Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Tony Evers of Wisconsin, and Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania said to our president, it's go for launch. After the debate, all 3 of them said, you're looking good, Mr. President. If those 3 governors, if one of them told President Biden, I'm not saying it, if they so much as express concern, then maybe Joe right now would be wavering. He might be saying, I'm going to listen. Some people are saying I should drop out. Let me listen. He's not listening because based purely on evidence and analysis on the ground. Joe knows he's going to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and he has to work a little harder in Pennsylvania. Like I said, Trump can't steal Pennsylvania. There are too many Democratic Party guardrails in that state. The Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is heavily Democratic. This isn't about his ego. This is a solid pathway to 270. Now, Biden can lose Nevada. He can lose Georgia and Arizona, the 3 states he won in 2020. He still gets exactly 270 when he wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Of the 3, Pennsylvania has the most electoral votes, 19. So if he loses Pennsylvania, and I see no reason he will, if he loses Pennsylvania, then he needs to win Nevada, which he won in 2020. Hillary won in 2016. He needs to win Nevada again, and along with Nevada, he needs to win either Georgia or North Carolina. So if he loses Pennsylvania, then he has to win Nevada again, and then he has to win Georgia or North Carolina. Maybe Arizona. I'm not sure about Arizona. I think he won Arizona, but I don't know if Nevada and Arizona add up to Pennsylvania. I'll get back to you on that. So I have no idea what electoral map Rob Reiner and Abigail Disney are looking at. What polling are they seeing that's convinced them that Biden's path to 270 is filled with roadblocks and potholes? It isn't. Now, a new Emerson College poll, not as good as Morning Consult, but a new Emerson College poll, does show Trump ahead of Biden in Michigan by 1 point, well within the margin of error. That same Emerson poll has Trump leading Biden by 3 points in Wisconsin, slightly on the outer perimeter of the margin of error. And Pennsylvania, Biden is behind, according to Emerson, by 5 points. So there is some data that you can clearly see that shows slippage after the debate. But that's a garbage poll. Out of 170 million votes in November, it comes down to 3 states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. And those 3 states could come down to 100,000 votes, did in 2016. Look at 2020. Out of 8 million votes cast in Pennsylvania, Joe Biden beat Trump in 2020 by something like 80,000 votes out of 8 million. Out of 3 million votes cast in Wisconsin, Joe Biden beat Trump in 2020 by 20,000 votes. Of the nearly 5.5 million votes cast in Michigan, Joe Biden beat Trump by about 155,000 votes. He did really well in Michigan. That election in 2020 was decided by 255,000 votes in those 3 states. 2016 was decided by 100,000 votes in those 3 states. So don't talk to me about trend lines. Don't talk to me about national polling and approval ratings. Tell me which candidate is going to find, let's be on the safe side, 500,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Can you tell me that Biden can't find 500,000 votes in those 3 states? 2 months before Labor Day? You tell me that he should concede because you're positive that he can't find those 500,000 votes. And who can? Who can? Your utopian dream ticket that's a fantasy because it doesn't exist? The Democratic governors of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin have all told Joe Biden he's going to win this. Josh Shapiro says Biden will win Pennsylvania. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, denied reports that she said Biden just lost Michigan while she was watching the debate. She said that was a lie. She said he's going to win Michigan, and she's not interested in being on the new ticket. Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin, says Joe is going to win Wisconsin. He was campaigning with Joe on Friday before the Stephanopoulos interview. So I want to look at the Senate races, which I think will be determinative of how this election plays out. I've been talking about updraft, how Biden wins because of updraft, because abortion will be on the ballot. And he will win because Democrats who are lukewarm about Joe Biden will vote for the Democratic Senate candidates and for reproductive rights and toss in for Joe Biden. On the last show, I talked about abortion being on the ballot in Florida, Nevada, Arizona, and 8 other states. I'm not going to go over that now. I'm going to go quickly through the key Senate races and show you the updraft, how Joe is going to benefit from that. So there's the updraft from abortion on the ballot, the updraft from very strong Democratic candidates for Senate. There's also the updraft from our economy. There's updraft from these job numbers, which are way more important than inflation. Inflation, there's no question that prices have gone up something like 20, 25%, maybe 28% since Joe Biden took office. It is a problem. But the job numbers are way more important than inflation because inflation does not cut into someone's self-esteem, whereas unemployment does. Americans, whether they know it or not, are feeling better about themselves because they are working again. Most polling on the state of the economy shows Americans think the state of the American economy is heading in the wrong direction under Joe Biden. But when they are asked about their own finances, when they are asked how their city or state is doing, a majority in some polls, not all, some polls show a majority of Americans in swing states saying they personally are better off than they were 4 years ago, but the country is not financially. Well, the American people are always dissatisfied with Congress, but never with their own member of Congress. That's why they keep getting reelected. The American people are dissatisfied with how the country writ large is doing, but not so much on how their state or city is doing in some polls. Now look, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that all the polls, and I mean every single one of them, every single poll shows a majority of Americans think Trump would do a better job handling the economy than Joe Biden will over the next 4 years. All of them say they will be better off financially over the next 4 years if Trump wins. Some polls show a majority of Americans believe they were better off financially when Trump was president. Okay? Some polls. But there are also polls showing that Americans are beginning to realize they are much better off under Joe Biden because they're working. I'm going to get to the Senate in a second. But I believe the key number to pay attention to, more important than polling, unemployment numbers. Unemployment in the key battleground states. Those are the numbers Joe Biden is staring at. And he's thinking, I did exactly what I was supposed to. I'm not quitting. Why should I lose my job when everyone else, because of me, has one? So, if this election is on the economy, Joe is going to win. If the argument is over the economy, once you get, after Labor Day, and you get the Clintons, the Obamas, out on the campaign trail in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, making the case for the economy, I believe Democrats win the election if it is about the economy and, most importantly, abortion. If this election is on abortion, Biden wins, because this election is going to be decided by suburban women, black women, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Where is Joe going to find the 500,000 votes he needs in those three states? Suburban women. And very few women, I think one white woman in Congress has asked Joe Biden to step aside. It's the only woman. It's men, white men, basically. Women know what the stakes are. This is about reproductive freedom. And that's why the Republican platform that we just saw yesterday is turning its back on the pro-life movement. There are a lot of crazy evangelicals, which is redundant, who feel that Donald Trump is throwing them under the bus. He says, I can't win promising what you want. Trump is looking at polls, and he does not want this to be about abortion. If this election, however, is about fear of migrants and hatred for the LGBTQ community, Trump is going to win. That's what Trump wants this election to be about, the migrants. You know, again, I am often wrong, but I'm often right. I don't care what anyone says. Migrants poisoning the blood of our nation is not a winning message. We saw that this week in France, and we're going to see that here in November. It's a hard sell convincing a majority of Americans that gender-affirming care for minors and dark-skinned migrants are their biggest concerns. Again, elections don't start until after Labor Day. We're 2 months away. And Americans vote with their wallet. Are they working? Yes. Greatest job expansion in American history. Yes, inflation. But when you look at these unemployment numbers in the key battleground states, you got to keep in mind inflation doesn't eat into your pride. It doesn't eat into your self-esteem. Unemployment does. That's why they called it the Great Depression. Unemployment is what destroys families. Inflation makes it hard for families. Inflation is tough, but you're not alone. It's a shared grief. Unemployment is a lonely place to be. Jobs in America, that's who we are, unfortunately. We are the only country that defines itself by how we earn a living. I think it's sick and insane. But self-esteem for way too many Americans flows from their work. When in America, when you meet foreigners, they say the thing about Americans is they can't figure out who you are until you tell them what you do for a living. It's why my grandparents came here. It's why the migrants at the border are trying to get here. It's in our DNA. People come here to escape oppression, gangs, pogroms, but they come here to work for opportunity. Work is part of our DNA. It's why Joe won't retire. He's 81. He's going to be 82 right after Election Day. And he still wants to work, not because he has to, because he needs to, because that's his identity. It's who we are. Low unemployment, even with a little inflation, that's what our nation's self-esteem runs on. So right now, forget the polling, which is good. I mean, it's not great. These are the numbers that count. The unemployment rate in Pennsylvania right now is 3.4%. In Wisconsin, it's 2.9%. Michigan, 3.9%. Arizona, 3.4%. I'm getting chills. I'm so excited about this. North Carolina, 3.6%. Florida, 3.3%. Georgia, 3.2%. Ohio, of all those alleged swing states, Ohio is the highest with 4.2%. Not really a swing state. These are numbers nobody has seen since the 1960s, and it's never lasted this long. This is the longest stretch of low unemployment in American history. And the people who are working, they're the ones who vote. They're the ones who vote. They're not watching the debate. They're not watching George Stephanopoulos, Morning Joe, or paying attention to the editorial board of the New York Times. Right now, they're working. And when they're not working, they're sleeping or partying, relaxing, then sleeping and wasting money on trips to water parks. They're not afraid right now of losing our republic to Trump because summer just started. They're going to do fear of fascism in the fall. Now they want to make up for all those lost COVID years, which after Labor Day, people will be reminded of who is responsible for 1 million dead Americans from COVID. Donald Trump. Now, Trump is very good at scaring Americans by telling lies about migrants and crime. Come fall, he becomes the scary one. People get scared in the fall. There's a reason Halloween isn't celebrated right now. People don't scare too easily when the days are longer. Halloween comes less than a week before Election Day, usually. The days get shorter, winter's breathing down our necks, and like the pagans before us, Americans start getting fearful. We check the cupboards. How much do I have to ride out the dark freeze? This is when we go into survival mode. Not now. We scare easily right before Election Day. And Trump is a horror show. Right now, it's an abstraction. But come fall, he makes Halloween real. He's the killer pumpkin. He same skin tone as a killer pumpkin. And then there's Joe, slow and steady. Joe Biden is going to be reassuring. Yes, he's gotten older. Sometimes he's impossible to hear. He mangles sentences. He's not articulate anymore. Everyone I know, everyone listening to me right now doesn't care. They don't care if he's suffering from Parkinson's, which he's not. He can still do the job. Everyone who listens to this show is concerned as to whether he can beat Trump. Everyone I know is saying, I'm okay with Joe, but are the voters? Yes, they are. Popes and kings don't step down when they're frail because their frailty is part of the job. It becomes an asset. I think Americans get that. And Americans like strange. They're more courageous and compassionate than the Democrats in the Beltway give us credit for. Switching Joe Biden out for someone younger isn't a new idea. It happens all the time. A fresh idea is keeping someone old on the job. That's a new idea. Someone who stammers and stutters and mangles sentences and is facing the inevitable. That's a fresh new idea. I believe American voters are turned off by the self-importance of old guard Democrats and Beltway pundits insisting the job of president is so important that we need a commander-in-chief who can be awakened at 3 a.m. so he can make those tough decisions. I believe most Americans know that that's horseshit. There are no important decisions that have to be made at 3 a.m. As I said, there are systems in place. It's why when 9/11 happened, George W. Bush kept reading My Pet Goat and then spent the next 12 hours frantically flying around the country while everybody else was in the Situation Room. There's no such thing as that 3 a.m. phone call. Presidents who obey the law, who don't invoke the hundreds of emergency powers at their disposal, who don't lead us into illegal wars or incite insurrections, those presidents who just do their job are 1/3 of our government. And most Americans get that. Most Americans don't want an overbearing president. So Joe's speaking style is going downhill, and it's going to get a lot worse. He is, as Bernie said, inarticulate. But I think that's a good thing. I'm sick of hearing that the president, because of television and radio, has to be the great communicator and use his bully pulpit. Americans have come to learn the bully pulpit is marketing, branding, and false promises. Joe is doing the real work, and Americans know that. I think his mangled sentences, I think it's an asset. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Do it. And he's doing it. So, the big Senate, how am I doing on time here? All right, I'm going long here. I can't do short shows. I wish I could. All right, the Senate races. These are the polls that Biden is looking at. Okay? Biden leads from behind, by the way. And again, some of you disagree with me when I say this. I don't see ticket splitting. Nobody's walking in to the voting booth in Pennsylvania and voting for Democratic Senator Bob Casey for re-election, and then saying, but you know who I'm voting for? President Trump. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So a new post-debate poll, it's a fresh poll, shows Democratic Senator Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, where Biden is in trouble, sort of. Bob Casey is up by 4 points in Pennsylvania. Casey was campaigning with the president Sunday. So what does that tell you about Pennsylvania? Updraft. Bob Casey is going to lift Joe Biden up. Reverse coattails. I've heard that expression used. I use the term updraft. I came up with that. Somebody wrote to me and said, why don't you say reverse coattails? The election in Pennsylvania is the one you got to watch. And Casey is running against this POS, David McCormick, graduated from West Point, most recently worked for McKinsey, and then became president of Bridgewater Associates. That's a hedge fund in Connecticut, a huge hedge fund in Connecticut. So McCormick isn't even living in Pennsylvania like Dr. Oz. And we're now discovering his claims of being a big job creator are being proven wrong. If you run Bridgewater Associates, a hedge fund, you destroy jobs. You're not a job creator. But he boasts, I'm a job creator. Well, he ran a company in Pittsburgh called Free Markets, and he insisted that he created hundreds of jobs running free markets. But according to reporting by WHYY, a PBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, McCormick became president of Free Markets in 2002. When he joined the company, it had 1,068 employees. Within 2 years, he fired 177 and then shipped another 100 jobs off to India. Now, some of you might think this is nitpicking, not important. Voters take that very seriously. Firing people, have you ever been fired? Again, all the people I see saying, get rid of Joe Biden, these are the people who are, it's very easy for them to fire others. They divide the world into those who serve and those who are served. You know, Schiff graduated from Harvard Law School. He's to be served. And he fires the servers who don't serve him properly. That's why Schiff was so quick after the debate to say, I don't know, maybe Joe should go. But people who've been fired, don't want Joe to be fired. Pay attention to who's saying Joe has to go. David Axelrod, Obama's campaign manager in 2008, who never forgave Barack in 2012 because he didn't get a 15% commission on the nearly $1 billion that Obama spent on advertising. David Axelrod, these Democratic strategists, get 15% of the ad buys, and Obama wouldn't give David Axelrod 15% of like $1 billion in ad buys in 2012, and it broke Axelrod's heart that he didn't get his 15%. But let's listen to him. He's going to tell us that Joe can't win, that Joe should drop out. And replace him with whom? Casey's going to win Pennsylvania, and he's going to pull Biden up with him. Nobody's ticket splitting in Pennsylvania. So we have Senate polls taken before the debate. The Pennsylvania Senate poll is the only one we have after the debate. And they're hard to do, state polls. It's much harder to conduct accurate polls on such a granular level. That's another reason Biden isn't stepping aside. There are big swings in the national polls, and they mean nothing, but these state polls, they take time, and they're usually in the neighborhood of correct. Wisconsin, pre-debate, has Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin up by 7. You think the people who are going to vote for Tammy Baldwin watched the debate and said, oh, Joe Biden's mangling sentences. I can't vote for Tammy Baldwin. What universe are you living in? Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen in Nevada is up by 5 points in one poll, up by 12 in another poll. Ruben Gallego, the Democratic congressman from Arizona, is beating Carrie Lake in the Senate race for Kyrsten Sinema's seat, averaging 4 points right now. I've seen him leading her by 12, 14 points. Slotkin in Michigan is up by 4 points in Michigan. One of the lies that Donald Trump spreads is Minnesota is in play. It's not. Minnesota is not in play. Republicans haven't won Minnesota since, I think it was 1972. Senator Amy Klobuchar is running for re-election in Minnesota. She's up by 11 points. Is anyone going into the voting booth voting for Klobuchar and then Donald Trump? Seriously? What are these Senate races telling you? You can't gerrymander a Senate race. A Senate race is a leading indicator of how the electoral map is going to look, what the Electoral College is going to look like. These Senate races are leading indicators. Senate races are winner take all. Senate races are the boots on the ground campaigns. Senate races, retail politics, where voters get up close and personal with the Democratic Party, which means they're not getting up close and personal with just the candidate for Senate. These are surrogates for Joe Biden. What does it say about Joe Biden's chances in Nevada if the incumbent Senator Jackie Rosen is leading by 12 points in one poll? It says people really like Jackie Rosen. They're probably indifferent about Joe Biden. It means they're going to vote for Jackie Rosen forcefully, lackadaisically for Joe Biden. 2 Senate Democrats are in tough races. Tester in Montana, Brown in Ohio, and both have refused to give Joe Biden a full-throated endorsement after the debate. Politically, that makes sense. Senate Democrat John Tester is running a tough race in deep red Montana. I think he's the only, Democrat who holds elective office in Montana. So he, on a national level, or in the state, I don't think they have a Democratic governor, attorney general. I don't think Democrats do too well in Montana. So after the debate, Tester said Biden still has to prove it to him that he's up for the job. Tester also said to voters, I promise to stand up to Joe Biden when he's wrong. It's going to be a hard seat to keep, but Tester has been there for 20 years. He also has one of the highest approval ratings among his constituents than any other American politician. He is one of the most popular politicians in America. He's running against Republican Tim Sheehy, a former United States Navy SEAL. The Cook Political Report shows this race as a toss-up, but recent polling averages show Sheehy, the Republican, leading by about 5 points. So it's Montana. If Tester is going to win, and he knows how to win, he's got to run against Trump and Biden. In Ohio, Democrat Sherrod Brown, like Tester, has held his Senate seat for 20 years. He has a much easier go of it than Tester does in Montana. After the debate, Sherrod Brown said he's not a pundit. He said there are legitimate concerns about Joe Biden's age, and right now, I'm listening. Brown is running against Bernie Moreno, the owner of a car dealership who has never held elective office, but he's endorsed by Trump. He's a weak candidate. Very weak. Polling averages show Sherrod Brown leading Moreno consistently by 6.3 percentage points. I've never seen a poll where Sherrod Brown is losing. But Ohio has become a reliably red state. But really only since 2016. So how reliably red is it? Unemployment in Ohio is 4.2%. Who knows? J.D. Vance did okay in 2022, running on culture war issues, but a year later, Ohio codified into the state constitution a woman's right to choose. I'm not saying Biden has a chance of winning Ohio. I'm just saying he has a chance. I think Sherrod Brown is really strong in Ohio. It went red in 2016. It went red in 2020. I think Obama carried Ohio in 2008 and 2012. I think. Well, Capitol Hill Democrats returned from their 4th of July break, and the white men are calling for the president to step aside. They're suggesting we make way for a younger generation based on zero polling. These responsible Democrats are calling for a mini primary and an open convention. They say a series of nationally televised town halls and a rock'em sock'em convention will bring eyeballs to the race and really energize voters. Well, here's a dirty, dark secret about politics. It's boring. It's not a reality show, Donald Trump's success notwithstanding. Democratic politics, the Democratic Party, politics in this party is boring. It's about delivering to the base jobs, bring down inflation, increase social mobility, and most importantly, protecting reproductive freedom. Voters don't want a show. They don't want to tune in every night to watch the convention. The American people don't want a show. They don't want chaos. That's what Trump gave us for 4 years. The American people don't want chaos. They want a steady hand at the till. In the end, they want Joe Biden. Yes, Vice President Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, and Gavin Newsom are young, shiny, and exciting. And they would probably beat Trump in a debate. But there is zero polling suggesting they do better than Biden in November. The polling I'm looking at, the polling Joe Biden is looking at, says once the dust from the debate, once the dust from the Democratic Party's bickering and backstabbing, once the dust from the media's desperate need to create a story where none exists, once all that dust settles, we will, after the August convention, see the polls revert to a dead heat. And then the general election starts in November. That's when it usually starts. As I've pointed out, this is the longest general election in American history. We knew who the nominees were by March 1st. I know some of you are terrified of Trump, and this uncertainty is keeping you up at night, but slow and steady. Stay the course. You can't fix things by ruining them. Some of you might have had corporate jobs. Maybe once in your life you had a corporate job. And if you did, I'm really sorry. You might remember that you had this corporate job where you and a group of coworkers got assigned a project and you were given a month to complete it. And because you and your coworkers got along, you were able to finish the project in 2 weeks instead of 4. Does this sound familiar? And this is what's going on in the Democratic Party right now. So you're working in a corporation, you finish the project 2 weeks early. Now the older, more seasoned team members, they know not to tell upper management that we came in 2 weeks early. The older, the pros know, let's just spend the next 2 weeks pretending to work on this project, even though we all know it's been completed. It's smarter than going to the boss and saying, hey, we finished the job early. You got anything else for us to do? See, older, more seasoned people know. Don't tell the boss how quickly you finish the job. But there's always the younger, ambitious team member who's got enthusiasm, and they let slip to the boss while standing at the urinal that the project is completed 2 weeks early. Give me a cookie. Look how good a job I did, boss. And the boss says, oh, really? You finished that project 2 weeks early? No cookie for you. He says, why haven't I seen it? So he asks the rest of the team, why haven't I seen the project? And the older, more seasoned members of the group say to the boss, oh, we're not done yet. We're still working on it. We're still tweaking. And the boss says, let me join the tweak. I like to tweak. But there's no need for a tweak. It's done. But since this is a corporation and salaries must be justified and nobody is allowed to spend the next 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing just because they did a great job and finished the project 2 weeks early, everybody has to tweak. Busy work. It's all about looking busy and feeling in control. The boss looks busy, feels important, feels like he's in control. And the boss looks at the project that got finished 2 weeks early. Knowing there's 2 more weeks, he says, or she says, looks at the project and says, I don't know. Well, of course they don't know. That's why they're the boss. And because there are still 2 weeks left, the boss says, here's what we're going to do. How about we start from scratch? Show me options. I like what I see, but since we have 2 weeks, let's throw everything out. We learned something from this project that you finished, but throw it out. Let's build something even better. And I'll help you. And then 2 weeks pass. And the boss has made such a hash of things, the new version of the project falls behind schedule. But the boss can't admit that the project finished 2 weeks ago was perfect. The one he threw out can't admit they got it right in just 2 weeks. So the boss extends the deadline another month. And the project that was finished in 2 weeks Takes 4 weeks, 6 weeks now, and it starts falling apart. And everyone, except the boss, privately thinks, we got it right the first time. If we just didn't let her know that we finished 2 weeks early, this would be over. And that's what's happening to the Democrats right now. A lot of mid-level management douchebags are panicking because the election doesn't start until Labor Day. They have 2 months. The project was finished. They needed to pick a candidate. They picked the candidate back in March. Now they're waiting for the general election. The economy is strong, but they have 2 months before Labor Day. So they want to tweak. Let's tweak the ticket. We can make it better. I'm hearing more and more pundits, Democrats, white men say, let's give the American people a show. Let's give them a crack up inside the party. Let's fight it out at the convention. The American people will love that. No, they won't. No, they won't. Don't make politics any more of a spectator sport it already is. All this bedwetting over the debate is because politics is already a spectator sport that has no bearing on the actual results of an election. So, when Joe Biden gets reelected, remember the names of all the pundits, all the Democrats, the white men who called for him to step aside. They all have something in common. They're all white, and they are men. Don't see too many women. 1 or 2. Don't see too many women panicking over Joe Biden. Not sure I see any black Democrats, at least in the House, calling on Joe to step aside. And why is that? Well, women and blacks here in America understand what the stakes are in this election. They also know what it means to be fired unjustly, so they have some empathy for an 81-year-old man who's lost his step. And they also know deep down inside, because women got the vote in 1920, and black people really got the vote, I would say, in 1965. I mean, across the board, they didn't get the vote until 1965. Women and black Democrats know politics is never easy. They can handle a hiccup like a bad debate or a president whose gait is a little slow. And women and blacks are used to being lied to, and they know when they're being lied to. God help this party if Joe Biden steps aside and Vice President Harris doesn't get the top of the ticket. And God help this party if Biden steps aside and Vice President Harris does get the top of the ticket. You think everybody is going to get behind the vice president? You think everybody's going to get behind Gavin Newsom? Because I hear a lot of white men talking about what a great candidate Gavin Newsom would be. Based on what? That he's a white male, with shiny teeth, a full shock of hair. He's anorexic, telegenic, anorexic. White men are saying, that's the guy who can beat Trump. I know that because I'm a white male whose brain is still stuck in the 50s. Vice President Harris, why aren't they mini primaries, open convention? It's her turn. But people are saying, we're not sure about her. God help this party if she doesn't get, if he's not stepping aside. If she doesn't get the nomination, if he steps aside and she doesn't get the nomination, the party will crack up. Certain constituents will, and if she does get the nomination, the white men who are calling for Joe Biden to step aside, they want Gavin Newsom. They don't want Harris. They're going to fight for Newsom. Newsom, I keep hearing Newsom. I suspect women, people of color, look at him and see a guy who's way too good at this. He is. He's way too good at it. And you know what makes Joe Biden more attractive than Gavin Newsom? He's old. He's fragile. He used to be pretty good at it. Not anymore. He sucks at it. I trust Joe Biden more than I do Gavin Newsom because Joe now sucks at politics. And I think we're going to see that in the polling. I do. I really think people are going to respond to Joe Biden being a sucky politician. I think polling will tell us in the next week that voters trust Joe Biden more now because he's floundering. If you've been listening to me over the years, sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right. I'm right about Rubio. If Trump picks Rubio, we're in trouble. That's his only good choice. And if he picks him, we're in trouble. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I was wrong about the debate. Sometimes wishful thinking gets the best of me, but life is wishful thinking. There's nothing wrong with wishful thinking. So, this is what I'm hoping for. Nothing will make me happier than seeing new polling that shows the debate meant nothing. The interview with Stephanopoulos meant nothing. That all these self-important Democrats throwing these white men, let's just call them white men, throwing Joe to the curb, all these Democratic strategists and editorial boards who think they know what's best. Nothing would please me more to see them all proven wrong, especially since they always are. They always are. The Washington Post now counts 9 House Democrats calling for Joe Biden to be replaced at the top of the ticket. Okay, 9 House Democrats officially are saying Joe needs to get out. 8 of the 9 turncoats are men, 1 woman. 2 of the turncoats are members of the LGBTQ community, 1 woman, 1 man. 1 is Asian. There's 1 Asian calling for Joe to step aside. 1 is Hispanic. Not a single black member of the House has turned on Joe Biden. Angie Craig, the first openly gay representative from Minnesota, is calling for Joe to step aside. She's white. Okay? Adam Smith, count them. Adam Smith of Washington, white male, wants Joe to step aside. Lloyd Doggett of Texas, white male. Jim Himes of Connecticut, white male. Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, white male. Jerry Nadler of New York, white male. 5 years ago, I would have done a joke. I'm not going to just say white male. Mike Quigley of Illinois, white male. 6 out of the 9 are white men. Sounds like the Supreme Court. Right? Oh, okay. Clarence Thomas and Barrett. Then there's California Democrat Mark Takano. He's gay and Asian. Raul Grijalva, his father was a Mexican migrant. He's calling for Biden to step aside. House Democrat, I'm going to wrap it up. House Democrat from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, put it best, quote, "The ticket at this point in time is Biden and Harris. And so long as the president says that he can do this job, then that is our ticket. We have a democratic process. We went through the primary, and to subvert the will of the people based on polls is not what we do in a democracy." Jasmine Crockett. Chairwoman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus from Washington, Pramila Jayapal, said on Monday that reporters and prognosticators spending energy on the president's health should expend an equal amount of energy asking Republicans why they are loyal to Donald Trump, despite his being a convicted felon with dictatorial aspirations who, rather than conceding defeat in 2020, incited an insurrection against our government. She said Democrats are still considering the best path forward to, quote, protect our democracy. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus are standing firm with Joe Biden. And during Sunday's meeting of top House Democrats, members of the Congressional Black Caucus expressed anger and disgust with members of the Democratic Party who are wetting the bed. California House Democrat Barbara Lee, she's the only member of Congress to have voted against authorizing the war in Afghanistan. During Sunday's call, she reportedly expressed exasperation with Democrats who want to give up on Joe Biden. California House Democrat Maxine Waters also came to the president's defense during the meeting. By the way, these are all women of color. California House Democrat Maxine Waters also came to the president's defense during the meeting. She said she's older than Biden and called Trump, quote, a no-good, deplorable, lying, despicable human being. Exactly. What are we discussing here? That Biden said, I killed Medicare? So she added, quote, there ain't gonna be no other Democratic candidate. It's going to be Biden, and you better know it, unquote. I like Maxine Waters. She was briefly, when I got thrown out of a house and during one of my divorces, she was temporarily my congresswoman. Let me repeat what she said. Maxine Waters. There ain't going to be no other Democratic candidate. It's going to be Biden, and you better know it. Joyce Beatty of Ohio, former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, says she's 100% behind Joe Biden. House Democrat Frederica Wilson from Florida said, quote, any leader calling for President Biden to drop out needs to get their priorities straight and stop undermining this incredible actual leader who has delivered real results for our country. I'll get back to Frederica Wilson in a second. Louisiana Democrat Cedric Richmond, African American, said it's worth noting that it is the white Democrats who are calling for Biden to step aside. I'm going to wrap it up. But when is General Kelly going to apologize to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson? Some of you might remember back in 2017, during the first year of Trump's presidency, Trump called the widow of a fallen soldier who happened to be Congresswoman Wilson's constituent down in Florida. Frederica Wilson, who takes the job of Congresswoman seriously, and she knew the soldier who was killed, she sat in on the call where Trump couldn't remember the name of the soldier, and then flippantly said to the widow, well, you know, this is what he signed up for. And when Congresswoman Frederica Wilson went public with that, nobody believed her. And there were death threats to her office. And she couldn't travel to Washington for a couple of days because she challenged Donald Trump. She couldn't vote in the House. General Kelly, who was chief of staff at the time, emotionally defended Donald Trump's call to the military widow and said Frederica Wilson is a grandstander. She takes credit for things that she has no right to. He cited some story about her taking credit for an FBI building. And then the tape of her speech at the dedication of the FBI building showed that to be a lie, that she wasn't taking credit for the FBI building. He said some racially tinged things about the Congresswoman and insisted that Trump's call to the military widow was perfect, even though the widow told the New York Times that Trump couldn't remember her husband's name. The mother of the widow, the mother of the fallen soldier, said Trump disrespected my son. But General Kelly, who was the chief of staff under Donald Trump, insisted that Congresswoman Frederica Wilson was lying, grandstanding. And then, last year, General John Kelly went public, went on record to confirm what his president really thought of the troops. John Kelly talked about visiting Arlington with Trump, visiting Normandy, going to World War I cemeteries in France, where Trump called the men buried there suckers and losers. Didn't understand why they went off and fought. I think General Kelly owes Congresswoman Frederica Wilson an apology. She was the first one in 2017 to expose Donald Trump's contempt for our troops. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you enjoyed any of this show, please share it. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments. Did I ask you to share? Please share this. The only reason I have any listeners is because people have shared these episodes. I'm not part of any network. I'm not famous. I'm not, I didn't host a reality show and then decide to do a podcast. So it's only because the listeners have shared these episodes on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, and whatever, or in an email or in a text message. Robert Smigel and Sam Cedar, those are the ones who have helped me. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com, hit the transcripts menu. And while you're over at Shop David Feldman, waste some money by buying a Rudy's coffee mugshot, a Donald Trump coffee mugshot, or perhaps Still a Democrat t-shirt, or a Still a Democrat coffee mug, or a Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. Don't buy the Trump fart filtration masks or the hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron. That's my biggest seller. I work so hard on this show. I don't curse. I look for the mot juste. And my biggest seller is I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Chef's apron. Very humbling. It reminds me how full of shit I am to think that. Anyway, thank you to Bob in the chat room. I'm thinking of doing another watch party this month. I think for Trump's convention speech. Somebody said to me, you need to watch one of his speeches with a group of people and dissect it. I think, let me know if you have any interest in doing a convention watch party where we look at Trump's speech and then discuss it afterwards. Okay, that's it. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. I also am thinking of, if I know that Bob can't make it all the time, and there might be some people who want to be moderators for the chat, because I hear there's been some problems with some people. I think at the next, I don't know, either at the next watch party, or maybe I'll just have a Zoom meeting with people who would like to become moderators. If you would like to be a moderator in the chat room, let me know. Okay. Thank you.